In today's video, I'm going to take a ideally unbiased look at exactly what Bill 60 does, how it changes the rules for property owners, landlords, and tenants, and why it is sparking protests and political backlash. This isn't my first time covering this. I put out a video. This almost changed everything for landlords and tenants when the Ford government actually walked back their changes to rent control. So the message from the protesters in this instance was that this legislation would make housing more unstable for renters and worsen Ontario's housing and homelessness crisis. So let's start off with an explainer. What is Bill 60? Bill 60 is a sweeping housing bill introduced by the Ontario government on October 23rd, and it was fast-tracked through the legislature in just a month. The Ford government invoked a time allocation limit debate and even skipped the usual committee hearings, meaning the bill saw minimal public input before getting passed. Now, the housing-related sections of Bill 60, which is mostly what I'm going to be talking about today, I mean, the whole thing is kind of a housing bill, given it's about construction, et cetera, but there's a bunch of like landlord-tenant stuff, and then there's a bunch of like construction red tape stuff. The sections that people are concerned about are focused on speeding up evictions and altering landlord-tenant rules, which the government claims will encourage more rental housing and get more homes built. There is myriad research on rent controls hurting rental supply. I'd say like most economists seem to be in agreement that rent controls are actually not good for rental supply, but this isn't really a rent control debate, because that was taken off the table. And Ontario kind of has a two-tiered system. If you don't know how Ontario's rent controls work, basically as it stands right now, anything built after 2018 is not subject to rent control. So you can increase the rent as much as you want as a landlord on an annual basis. Anything built before 2018 is subject to rent control. The challenge with the older supply being subject to rent control is that economists would argue that it disincentivizes landlords to improve the quality of those units to try and appreciate the value or appreciate the rents. And so while you haven't disincentivized new supply because it's not subject to rent control, if anything, you've relatively incentivized it compared to the non-rent controlled older stock. The argument is that you would be disincentivizing the improvement of older units. But nonetheless, the critics are arguing that a lot of these changes are going to come at the expense of tenant protections and that they could lead to more evictions and homelessness. So let's go through the key provisions from Bill 60 affecting landlords and tenants.